The mysterious case of Dennis Martin. One of the most perplexing missing 411 cases involves Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy who vanished in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee on June 14, 1969. Dennis, his brother, and a few other children were playing a game of hide-and-seek near Spence Field, a popular hiking area. His father, William Martin, was watching the children from a short distance and noticed that Dennis had disappeared without a trace. What followed was one of the most extensive search efforts in the history of the park. Over 1,400 searchers, including park rangers, the National Guard, and volunteers, combed the area for days, but no sign of Dennis was ever found. The search was further complicated by heavy rain and fog, which hampered visibility and erased potential tracks. The most disturbing aspect of Dennis Martin's case is a report from another family that was hiking near Spence Field around the same time. They claimed to have seen a strange, rough-looking man carrying something on his back, moving swiftly through the woods. This sighting was never confirmed, and the man was never identified, adding a sinister layer to Dennis's disappearance. To this day, no trace of Dennis Martin has ever been found, leaving his family and investigators with more questions than answers. The vanishing of Stacey Ann Arras. Another baffling case is that of Stacey Ann Arras, a 14-year-old girl who disappeared from Yosemite National Park in California on July 17, 1981. Stacey was on a horseback riding trip with her father and a group of other tourists. After reaching a rest area near Sunrise Meadows, Stacey decided to take a short walk to a nearby lake with one of the older members of the group. Stacey's father watched her walk towards the lake, but after a few minutes she was nowhere to be seen. The older man who had accompanied her eventually returned, but Stacey did not. A search was immediately launched, but despite the efforts of search teams and bloodhounds, no trace of Stacey was ever found, except for one solitary lens from her camera. What makes this case particularly eerie is the fact that Stacey disappeared in broad daylight in a relatively open area with other people nearby. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away from the lake, and no logical explanation for her sudden disappearance. The case remains unsolved, with many speculating that something unnatural may have been involved. The strange disappearance of Jared Atadero. In 1999, Jared Atadero, a 3-year-old boy, disappeared while hiking with a group of adults and children in the Comanche Peak wilderness of Colorado. The group was exploring the Big South Trail when Jared ran ahead of the adults and was never seen again. Despite the immediate search efforts and extensive follow-up searches, Jared's disappearance remained a mystery for years. 3 years later, in 2003, a few of Jared's remains were discovered on a rugged mountainside, miles away from the trail where he had last been seen. His clothing was found in a condition that defied explanation. His shoes were pristine, as if they had been carefully placed there, despite the harsh terrain. Furthermore, there were no signs of predation or trauma on the remains, leading investigators to question how Jared could have ended up in such an inaccessible location without any obvious cause of death. This case has fueled speculation about the involvement of something otherworldly or paranormal, as the circumstances surrounding Jared's disappearance and the condition of his remains do not align with any known natural phenomena. The enigmatic disappearance of Paula Jen Weldon. Paula Jen Weldon, an 18-year-old college student, disappeared on December 1, 1946, while hiking on the Long Trail near Bennington, Vermont. Paula was a sophomore at Bennington College and had set out alone for a hike on a Sunday afternoon. Several people reported seeing her on the trail, including a group of hikers who said she was only a short distance ahead of them. However, when the group reached the point where they had last seen Paula, she was gone. An extensive search was conducted, but no trace of Paula was ever found. The area where she disappeared, known as the Bennington Triangle, has been the site of several other unexplained disappearances over the years, leading some to speculate that the region is cursed or home to some unknown force. Paula's disappearance remains one of Vermont's most enduring mysteries, and despite numerous theories, including the possibility of foul play, no definitive answers have ever been uncovered. The lack of evidence, combined with the eerie history of the Bennington Triangle, has cemented Paula Jen Weldon's case as one of the most enigmatic missing 411 stories. The vanishing of Brandon Swanson. Though not a national park case, the disappearance of Brandon Swanson in 2008 shares many eerie similarities with missing 411 cases. Brandon, a 19-year-old college student, was driving home late at night in rural Minnesota when his car became stuck in a ditch. He called his parents for help, and they set out to find him, maintaining contact with him on his cell phone. Brandon told his parents he could see the lights of a nearby town and decided to walk towards them while they drove to meet him. However, despite being on the phone with him for over 45 minutes, his parents never located Brandon. The last thing they heard was Brandon exclaiming, "Oh, ***," before the line went dead. An extensive search of the area failed to turn up any sign of Brandon or his phone. The only clue was his car, which was found miles away from where he had told his parents he was. Despite the efforts of search teams, cadaver dogs, and even a psychic, Brandon Swanson has never been found, and his disappearance remains an unsolved mystery. The disappearance of Charles McCullough. In January 1975, Charles McCullough, a 19-year-old aspiring photographer, embarked on a journey to explore the natural beauty of Crater Lake National Park in Oregon. He was an adventurous spirit, excited about capturing the serene winter landscapes with his camera. Charles informed his friends that he would return in a few days, but when those days passed without any word from him, concern grew, and eventually, a full-scale search was launched. The search lasted for months, but no trace of Charles was found, until the following autumn, when two hikers stumbled upon a bizarre and unsettling scene deep within the park, miles away from any known trails. They discovered Charles's backpack, along with a small pile of bones, neatly placed atop a log. What made this discovery particularly chilling was the condition of his clothing. His jeans were found standing upright, as if he had just stepped out of them, and his belt was still fastened. His boots were nearby, but there were no socks, and there were no signs of struggle or injury. The mystery deepened when it was determined that only a few small bones, including his skull cap, were found, despite the fact that he was a healthy young man with a full skeleton. The medical examiner could not determine a cause of death, and the odd arrangement of his belongings led many to question whether something more sinister or otherworldly had occurred. How Charles ended up in such a remote, inaccessible location, why his remains were so sparse, and what caused his death remain unanswered questions, adding another layer to the enigma of the missing 411. The bizarre disappearance of Catherine Van Alst. In the summer of 1946, Catherine Van Alst, an 8-year-old girl, was camping with her family in Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas. Catherine was last seen playing with her brothers near their campsite. When her family realized she was missing, a massive search operation was launched, involving hundreds of volunteers, park rangers, and even bloodhounds. Despite their efforts, there was no trace of Catherine. After 6 days of searching, hope was fading. However, to everyone's astonishment, Catherine was found alive, sitting calmly on a rock in a cave, miles from where she had disappeared. What baffled the searchers was how an 8-year-old girl could have traveled such a distance, through rough terrain, barefoot, and without any food or water for nearly a week. Catherine was in surprisingly good condition, and when asked how she had survived, she reportedly said she had just walked away. The fact that she was unharmed, despite being exposed to the elements and without sustenance, and her calm demeanor upon being found, led some to believe that her disappearance and reappearance might have involved something beyond the ordinary. This case is often cited as one of the more perplexing examples of the missing 411 phenomenon, where the victim is found under inexplicable circumstances, leading to more questions than answers. The strange case of Carl Landers. In 1999, Carl Landers, a 69-year-old experienced hiker, vanished while attempting to climb Mount Shasta in California. Carl, along with 2 friends, had embarked on a trip to summit the mountain, a journey that Carl had successfully completed several times before. On the morning of May 25th, Carl left camp ahead of his friends to get a head start on the climb. That was the last time anyone saw him. Despite extensive searches by experienced mountaineers, search and rescue teams, and even helicopters, no trace of Carl was ever found. The area where Carl disappeared is known for its challenging terrain and unpredictable weather, But what makes this case particularly strange is that Carl was an experienced hiker familiar with the area, and the weather conditions on the day he disappeared were relatively mild. Mount Shasta itself is shrouded in mystery and has long been associated with legends of strange occurrences, including sightings of mysterious beings and unexplained lights. Some believe that Carl's disappearance may be linked to these phenomena, while others speculate that he may have fallen victim to a hidden crevasse or some other natural hazard. However, the complete lack of evidence, no clothing, no gear, no tracks, has left investigators puzzled, and Carl Landers remains missing to this day. The unsolved mystery of David Pollide's cases. The missing 411 phenomenon gained widespread attention largely due to the work of David Pollides, a former law enforcement officer who began researching unexplained disappearances in national parks after being contacted by a park ranger who noticed strange patterns in the cases. Pollides has since documented hundreds of these cases, and his books and documentaries have highlighted the many oddities and coincidences that seem to link them. One of the most unsettling aspects of these cases is the frequency with which search and rescue dogs fail to track the missing person. In many instances, the dogs will start to follow a scent only to lose it abruptly, often at a location where the terrain doesn't suggest any reasonable explanation for the disappearance, such as a body of water, a steep cliff, or an open field. In some cases, the dogs refuse to search at all, exhibiting strange behavior like whining, sitting down, or outright refusing to continue. Another common thread in these cases is the disappearance of individuals near bodies of water or large boulder fields. Many of the missing are last seen near creeks, rivers, or lakes, and their bodies are sometimes found in these locations under circumstances that defy explanation, such as a lack of water in the lungs or no signs of drowning. Children who go missing often reappear in places that would be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for them to reach on their own, sometimes miles away from where they were last seen and in areas that were previously searched multiple times. These anomalies have led some to speculate about the involvement of something beyond the natural world, whether it be cryptids, alien abductions, or even time slips. The creepy disappearance of Keith Parkins. In 1952, 2-year-old Keith Parkins disappeared from his grandfather's ranch in Ritter, Oregon. The area was rugged, with dense forests and steep hills, making it difficult terrain for a young child to navigate. Keith's family immediately launched a search, but after hours of looking, there was no sign of the boy. As night fell, the temperature dropped and the family feared the worst. The next morning, after 19 hours of searching, Keith was found alive, but the circumstances of his discovery were bizarre. He was found over 12 miles away from where he had disappeared, across 2 mountain ranges. For a 2-year-old child to have traveled such a distance in such a short amount of time, especially through rough and treacherous terrain, is almost impossible. Keith was found lying face down in the snow, but he was alive and relatively unharmed, although he was cold and exhausted. When asked how he got to where he was found, Keith was unable to provide any explanation. The case remains one of the most perplexing in the missing 411 series, as it defies logic and reason. How could a toddler have crossed such a vast distance, especially in such harsh conditions, without suffering more serious injuries or succumbing to the elements? The mystery of Keith Parkins' disappearance and reappearance remains unsolved. The enigmatic case of Bobby Bizup. In 1958, 10-year-old Bobby Bizup disappeared while attending a summer camp for the deaf in Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado. Bobby was attending Camp St. Malo, a Catholic camp situated near the rugged terrain of Mount Mika. On August 15, Bobby was last seen near a chapel on the campgrounds, heading towards the counselor's cabin. When he didn't arrive, the camp staff began searching, but Bobby had seemingly vanished without a trace. A massive search effort was launched, involving hundreds of volunteers, park rangers, and even the military. Despite the thoroughness of the search, Bobby's body was not found until almost a year later in a remote area of the park, about 2,500 feet above the camp, near treacherous terrain that a child of Bobby's age and physical condition would have struggled to reach. The circumstances of his discovery only deepened the mystery. Bobby's clothing was found scattered, his shoes intact, yet his remains were partially buried, suggesting the involvement of an animal. However, the condition and placement of his body parts did not align with typical predation patterns. The location of his remains, so far from the camp, also raised questions about how Bobby could have ended up there. The official cause of death was listed as exposure, but the strange details surrounding his disappearance and the location of his body have led many to speculate about other possibilities, including abduction or even something paranormal. To this day, the disappearance and death of Bobby Bizup remain unsolved, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a grieving family. The haunting case of the Yuba County Five. The Yuba County Five is one of the most disturbing and inexplicable missing person cases linked to the missing 411 phenomenon. In February 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, all with varying degrees of intellectual disabilities or mental health challenges, mysteriously disappeared after attending a college basketball game in Chico. The men, Jack Madruga, Ted Weiher, Gary Mathias, Bill Sterling, and Jack Hurt, were last seen alive purchasing snacks at a convenience store after the game. They never returned home, and their car was later found abandoned on a remote mountain road in the Plumas National Forest, miles away from their intended route. Despite the car being in working condition and the weather not being severe at the time, the men had seemingly left the vehicle and ventured into the wilderness. Months later, the remains of 4 of the men were found in and around a Forest Service trailer deep in the woods. Ted Weiher's body was found inside the trailer, emaciated and wrapped in several layers of blankets, suggesting he had survived for some time after they first went missing. The other 3 men were found outside, having succumbed to the elements. Strangely, Gary Mathias, one of the 5, was never found. His shoes were discovered inside the trailer, but there were no other traces of him, leading to wild speculation about what had happened to him and the others. The case is filled with odd details, such as the untouched food and supplies inside the trailer, which could have sustained them, and the distance they traveled from their car, especially given their physical and mental conditions. The reasons behind their detour into the mountains and their subsequent deaths remain one of the most chilling mysteries in the annals of missing person cases. The unsettling disappearance of Maura Murray. In 2004, 21-year-old Maura Murray vanished after a car crash on a rural road in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Maura, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, had emailed her professors and work supervisors that she was taking a week off due to a family emergency, which was later found to be untrue. She then packed her car and drove north without informing anyone of her destination. Around 7:30 p.m. on February 9, 2004, Maura's car was found crashed into a snowbank on Route 112. A bus driver who lived nearby stopped and asked if she needed help, but Maura declined, saying she had already called for roadside assistance. However, phone records show she never made such a call. The bus driver went home and reported the accident to the police. By the time they arrived, Maura had vanished. Despite extensive searches of the surrounding area, no trace of Maura was ever found. The strange circumstances of her disappearance, her sudden decision to leave school, the crash, and the lack of any evidence of her whereabouts have fueled countless theories. Some believe she may have staged her disappearance to start a new life, while others suspect foul play or even an accident in the rugged wilderness surrounding the crash site. Adding to the mystery is a series of strange occurrences after her disappearance, including a few possible sightings and mysterious online activity on her social media accounts. The case remains open, with investigators and amateur sleuths still trying to piece together what happened to Maura Murray, making it one of the most enduring and eerie unsolved missing person cases in recent history. The unresolved disappearance of Dior Kunz Jr. In July 2015, 2-year-old Dior Kunz Jr. disappeared from a campground in Lemhi County, Idaho, while on a family trip. Dior was with his parents, his great-grandfather, and a family friend at the remote Timber Creek campground when he went missing. His parents claimed they had left Dior with his great-grandfather for a short time while they explored the area, but when they returned, the toddler was gone. An exhaustive search of the surrounding area, including the nearby creek, turned up no clues. There were no signs of struggle, no tracks, and no evidence of an animal attack. Despite the parents' insistence that Dior was abducted or taken by a wild animal, investigators found no supporting evidence for these theories. Over time, inconsistencies in the parents' statements and behavior have led to growing suspicion, with some believing that foul play might be involved. However, without any concrete evidence, the case is stalled, and Dior's fate remains unknown. The mystery of how a 2-year-old could disappear so completely from a relatively small and isolated campground continues to haunt investigators and the public alike. The unsolved disappearance of Brandon Lawson. In 2013, 26-year-old Brandon Lawson vanished under bizarre circumstances after his truck ran out of gas on a remote stretch of highway near Bronte, Texas. Brandon had called his brother Kyle, asking for help, and during the conversation, Brandon mentioned that he was being chased and that he was bleeding. His last known contact was a 911 call, where he frantically reported that he was being pursued by someone and that he was in danger. When Kyle arrived at the location, he found Brandon's truck, but there was no sign of Brandon himself. Law enforcement searched the area but found no trace of him. Despite numerous search efforts and widespread media attention, Brandon Lawson has never been found. The case is rife with theories ranging from foul play to drug-related issues, as Brandon was reportedly under the influence at the time of his disappearance, to possible involvement of a third party. The cryptic nature of his 911 call, combined with a complete lack of physical evidence, makes this one of the most perplexing missing person cases in recent history. The mystifying disappearance of Jacob Gray. In April 2017, 22-year-old Jacob Gray disappeared while on a solo cycling trip through Olympic National Park in Washington state. Jacob's bicycle and camping gear were found abandoned near the Sole Duck River with no sign of him nearby. The park is known for its dense forests, rugged terrain, and unpredictable weather, making it a challenging environment even for experienced outdoorsmen. A massive search effort was launched, involving ground teams, helicopters, and search dogs, but despite their best efforts, Jacob remained missing for over a year. In August 2018, his remains were finally discovered deep in the wilderness, far from where his bike and gear had been found. The cause of death was undetermined, and the circumstances of his disappearance remain unclear. How Jacob ended up in such a remote location, and why he left his gear behind, are questions that continue to baffle his family and investigators. His case adds to the growing list of unexplained disappearances in national parks that leave more questions than answers. The chilling disappearance of Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach, a seasoned hiker and YouTuber, disappeared in November 2014 after embarking on a solo hike in the Mogave Desert near Area 51. Kenny, who had gained a following on YouTube for his adventurous hikes and exploration of mysterious places, had previously posted a video about discovering an unusual cave he called the M Cave during a hike. According to Kenny, the cave emitted strange vibrations that made him feel ill and disoriented, causing him to turn back. Determined to find the cave again, Kenny set out on another solo hike, despite warnings from his viewers and his own trepidation. This time, however, he never returned. When he failed to come home, a search was conducted, but all that was found was his cell phone near an abandoned mineshaft deep in the desert. The circumstances surrounding Kenny's disappearance have fueled numerous conspiracy theories, ranging from abduction by extraterrestrials to government cover-ups related to his proximity to Area 51. Some speculate that Kenny may have stumbled upon something he wasn't meant to see, while others believe he may have intentionally disappeared or met with foul play. Despite multiple search efforts, no trace of Kenny Veach has ever been found, and his case remains one of the most mysterious and unsettling disappearances linked to the missing 411 phenomenon. The strange disappearance of Amy Roe Bechtel. In 1997, 24-year-old Amy Roe Bechtel vanished while on a run in the Wind River Mountains near Lander, Wyoming. Amy, an avid runner and outdoor enthusiast, was preparing for an upcoming marathon when she went out for a routine training run on the Loop Road, a remote mountain road popular with hikers and runners. When Amy didn't return home, her husband, Steve Bechtel, became worried and reported her missing. A search was launched, but despite extensive efforts involving search teams, helicopters, and even psychics, no trace of Amy was ever found. Her car was discovered parked by the side of the road, with no signs of struggle or foul play. Over the years, various theories have emerged, including the possibility that Annie was abducted by someone who was familiar with the area. Others speculate that she may have fallen victim to an accident in the rugged terrain, though no evidence has ever supported this theory. The case has remained cold for over 2 decades, with no new leads or developments. Amy's disappearance is often cited as one of the most perplexing and disturbing cases of a young woman vanishing without a trace in a wilderness area. The eerie disappearance of Tom Messick. In November 2015, 82-year-old Tom Messick went missing while hunting with friends in the Lake George Wild Forest of New York. Tom, a highly experienced outdoorsman and former paratrooper, was part of a group of 6 hunters who had spread out in the woods, maintaining visual contact with each other. Despite his age, Tom was in good physical condition and familiar with the area. The group planned to meet up at a designated spot after their hunt, but when Tom didn't show up, his friends and family began searching for him. What followed was one of the largest search operations in the history of New York State, involving hundreds of searchers, including forest rangers, police, and volunteers, along with K-9 units and helicopters. Despite these efforts, no trace of Tom was ever found. Not a single item of his gear, no footprints, and no signs of struggle. What makes Tom Messick's disappearance especially eerie is the fact that he vanished in an area with clear sightlines, surrounded by other experienced hunters who neither saw nor heard anything unusual. The lack of any evidence, coupled with the fact that Tom had a 2-way radio and a whistle that he could have used to signal for help, adds to the mystery. His case has baffled authorities and remains unsolved, contributing to the lore of the missing 411 phenomenon. The baffling disappearance of Dale Stelling. In 2013, 51-year-old Dale Stelling disappeared while visiting Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado with his wife and son. Dale decided to take a short walk on the Spruce Treehouse Trail, one of the park's most popular and well-maintained parts. He told his family he would be back in 20 minutes, but when he failed to return, his wife and son became worried and alerted park rangers. A search was immediately initiated, but despite the trail's popularity and the park's relatively small size, Dale was never found. What makes this case particularly strange is that the trail Dale was on is a well-marked loop, heavily trafficked by tourists, and not far from the park's main facilities. The area was thoroughly searched, including nearby cliffs, caves, and crevices, but no sign of Dale was ever discovered. Theories about Dale's disappearance range from accidental fall to abduction, but no evidence has ever surfaced to support any of these ideas. The lack of any clues in an area that is typically considered safe and easy to navigate makes Dale Stelling's case one of the more puzzling and eerie disappearances within the missing 411 series. The perplexing case of the Jamison family. One of the most bizarre and tragic cases linked to the missing 411 phenomenon is the disappearance of the Jamison family in 2009. Bobby and Sherilyn Jamison, along with their 6-year-old daughter Madison, went missing after setting out to purchase land in a remote area near Red Oak, Oklahoma. Their truck was discovered a few days later, locked and abandoned on a dirt road. Inside the vehicle were their IDs, wallets, cell phones, a significant amount of cash, and the family's pet dog, which was found barely alive from starvation. However, there was no sign of the family. It wasn't until 4 years later, in November 2013, that the skeletal remains of all 3 Jamison family members were found by hunters in the woods, just 3 miles from where their truck had been abandoned. The bodies were so badly decomposed that no cause of death could be determined. The discovery of the remains did little to resolve the mystery. Instead, it raised more questions. Theories about the Jamison family's disappearance have ranged from murder-suicide, drug-related foul play, cult involvement, or even paranormal activity, given the strange behavior they exhibited before their disappearance. Neighbors had reported that the family believed their home was haunted, and Sherilyn had claimed to see spirits, which led some to speculate that the family's mental state might have played a role in their fate. However, without any concrete evidence, the truth remains elusive, making this one of the most unsettling and enigmatic cases associated with missing 411. The vanishing of Jason Jolkowski. In 2001, 19-year-old Jason Jolkowski disappeared while walking to meet a coworker at Benson High School in Omaha, Nebraska, where he was to catch a ride to work. Jason had spoken to his co-worker on the phone, confirming the pickup location, which was only 8 blocks from his home. Despite being broad daylight in a residential neighborhood, Jason never arrived at the school, and he was never seen again. Jason's disappearance is unusual because it did not occur in a remote or wilderness area, but rather in the middle of a suburban neighborhood. The route he was walking was familiar and straightforward, yet no one reported seeing him that morning, and there was no sign of a struggle or any indication of what might have happened to him. The case has baffled investigators for over 2 decades, with no significant leads or evidence. Jason's family has tirelessly searched for answers, but his disappearance remains unsolved, contributing to the unsettling pattern of people vanishing without a trace, even in seemingly safe environments. The strange disappearance of Zeb Quinn. In January 2000, 18-year-old Zeb Quinn disappeared under mysterious circumstances in Asheville, North Carolina. Zeb had just finished his shift at a local Walmart and planned to meet his friend, Robert Owens, to look at a car he was interested in buying. After the two left the Walmart parking lot in separate cars, they were seen on surveillance footage at a gas station, where Zeb appeared distressed. According to Owens, Zeb received a page and abruptly left the gas station, saying he needed to make a quick stop. He was never seen again. The next day, his car was found abandoned in a parking lot near a hospital. Inside the car were Zeb's glasses, a bottle of his medication, and a strange drawing of a pair of lips with an exclamation mark, an odd and unsettling detail that has never been explained. Adding to the mystery, 2 weeks after Zeb disappeared, his mother received a call from Walmart, informing her that Zeb had called in sick. However, the call was later traced to Owens, who claimed Zeb had asked him to do it. Owens was eventually convicted of an unrelated double murder, but he has never been charged in connection with Zeb Quinn's disappearance. The strange details, cryptic clues, and lack of resolution make Zeb Quinn's case one of the most perplexing and chilling missing person cases. It's a story filled with unanswered questions, strange behaviors, and eerie coincidences that continue to baffle investigators and haunt those who follow the missing 411 phenomenon. The unexplained disappearance of Christopher Tompkins. In January 2002, Christopher Tompkins, a 20-year-old surveyor, vanished under incredibly strange circumstances while working with a crew in the woods near Ellerslie, Georgia. Christopher was part of a 4-man team conducting a land survey along a rural road. The team was spaced about 50 feet apart, walking in a straight line parallel to the road. According to his co-workers, one moment Christopher was there, and the next he was gone. Christopher's tools were found scattered on the ground, and a single boot was discovered stuck in a barbed wire fence, but there was no sign of Christopher himself. The area was thoroughly searched, but no further clues were found. What makes this case particularly eerie is that Christopher disappeared in the middle of the day, with his co-workers only feet away from him, yet none of them saw or heard anything unusual. To this day, no trace of Christopher Tompkins has ever been found, and the circumstances surrounding his disappearance remain one of the most baffling and disturbing mysteries associated with the missing 411 phenomenon. The lack of any clear evidence, combined with the bizarre and sudden nature of his disappearance, has led to speculation about supernatural or otherworldly forces at play, though no definitive answers have ever emerged. The disappearance of Brian Schaffer. In April 2006, 27-year-old Brian Schaffer mysteriously vanished after a night out with friends in Columbus, Ohio. Brian was a second-year medical student at The Ohio State University and had gone to a local bar called the Ugly Tuna Saloon to celebrate the start of spring break. Security footage from the bar captured Brian entering the establishment, but he was never seen leaving. Despite extensive searches and widespread media coverage, no trace of Brian has ever been found. The bar's security footage was reviewed multiple times, and while it clearly shows Brian entering the bar, there is no footage of him leaving, leading investigators to theorize that he either left through an unmonitored exit or met with foul play. Adding to the mystery, Brian's cell phone continued to ring for days after his disappearance, but it eventually went dead, and no further activity was detected. His credit cards and bank accounts were never used again, and no one has come forward with any credible information about his whereabouts. The disappearance of Brian Shaffer has led to numerous theories, ranging from an accidental death or foul play to the possibility that he intentionally vanished to start a new life. However, without any concrete evidence, the case remains one of the most perplexing and unsettling missing person cases in recent memory, leaving his family and friends searching for answers that may never come. The creepy disappearance of Trenny Lynn Gibson. In October 1976, 16-year-old Trenny Lynn Gibson disappeared during a school field trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. Trenny was part of a group of about 40 students from Bearden High School who were hiking on the Andrews Bald Trail. She was last seen walking ahead of her classmates on a foggy afternoon when she suddenly vanished. Despite the large group and the presence of teachers, no one saw Trenny leave the trail or noticed anything suspicious. A search was launched immediately, but no trace of her was ever found. The only clue was her scent, which was picked up by search dogs, leading them off the trail and into a dense area of forest before it was lost. What makes Trenny's case particularly strange is the fact that she was an experienced hiker and was familiar with the area. The park was also heavily searched by experienced rangers, volunteers, and even the FBI, but no evidence of Trenny was ever uncovered. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged, including the possibility of an abduction, but the lack of any physical evidence has kept the case cold. The dense and often treacherous terrain of the Great Smoky Mountains has claimed many lives over the years, but the sudden and unexplained nature of Trenny Lynn Gibson's disappearance adds an unsettling layer to the mystery, making it a key case in the missing 411 phenomenon. The disappearance of Stephen Kubacki. In 1978, 23-year-old Stephen Kubacki, a student at Hope College in Michigan, disappeared while on a solo cross-country skiing trip near the shores of Lake Michigan. Stephen was an experienced outdoorsman, and his trip was meant to be a short excursion. When he failed to return, a search was conducted, and his skis and poles were found near the edge of the lake, along with his footprints leading out onto the ice, but there was no sign of Stephen. Given the icy conditions and the proximity to the lake, it was assumed that Stephen had fallen through the ice and drowned, although no body was ever recovered. The case took a bizarre turn 15 months later when Stephen suddenly reappeared, over 700 miles away in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, with no memory of the previous year. Stephen was found in good health, wearing clothes that weren't his and carrying a backpack filled with maps and hitchhiking gear. He had no recollection of where he had been or what had happened to him, and he couldn't explain how he had ended up so far from where he had disappeared. Stephen's reappearance, coupled with his amnesia, has led to wild speculation about what might have happened to him. Some suggest that he may have been the victim of an abduction, either by humans or something more otherworldly, while others believe he may have suffered a psychological break or been involved in something he couldn't remember. Whatever the truth, the case remains one of the strangest disappearances and reappearances linked to the missing 411 series. The disappearance of Frederick Valentic. In October 1978, 20-year-old Frederick Valentic, an Australian pilot, disappeared under highly mysterious circumstances while flying a Cessna 182 Litters light aircraft over Bass Strait in Australia. Frederick was on a routine training flight when he radioed air traffic control to report that he was being followed by an unknown aircraft. According to Valentic, the unidentified craft was large, with 4 bright lights, and was moving at high speed. He described it as hovering above his plane, then suddenly disappearing and reappearing in different locations around him. His final transmission was chilling. "It's not an aircraft." After that, all contact was lost, and Valentic's plane was never found. Despite an extensive search, no trace of the aircraft or Valentic was ever recovered. The case has since become one of Australia's most famous UFO-related mysteries, with some believing that Valentic was abducted by extraterrestrials. Skeptics argue that Valentic may have become disoriented and crashed into the sea, but the absence of any wreckage or evidence to support this theory has kept the case open to interpretation. The eerie nature of his final transmission, combined with the complete lack of physical evidence, makes the disappearance of Frederick Valentic one of the most enigmatic and unsettling aviation mysteries in the missing 411 catalog. The unsolved disappearance of Loria Bible and Ashley Freeman. In December 1999, 16-year-olds Loria Bible and Ashley Freeman vanished after a fire destroyed Ashley's home in Welch, Oklahoma. The bodies of Ashley's parents were found in the rubble, both of whom had been shot to death before the fire. However, there was no sign of Loria or Ashley, leading investigators to believe the girls had been abducted. The case grew colder as the years went by, with few leads and no sightings of the missing girls. In 2018, nearly 2 decades later, a suspect was arrested after a woman came forward, claiming to have witnessed the girls being held captive and eventually murdered. The suspect, who had a history of violent crimes, confessed to being involved in the killings, but refused to reveal the location of the bodies. Despite the arrest and partial confession, the remains of Loria Bible and Ashley Freeman have never been found. The case remains a haunting reminder of the brutality and mystery that can surround missing person cases, leaving the families without closure and the public with more questions than answers. The disappearance of Terrence Williams and Philip Santos. Terrence Williams and Philip Santos disappeared 3 months apart in 2003 in Naples, Florida, under strikingly similar and disturbing circumstances. Both men were last seen being placed in the back of a patrol car by the same sheriff's deputy, Steve Calkins. Philip Santos, a Mexican immigrant, disappeared in October 2003 after being involved in a minor traffic accident. Calkins claimed he dropped Santos off at a nearby Circle K convenience store, but Santos was never seen again. 3 months later, in January 2004, Terrence Williams, a 27-year-old African-American man, vanished under nearly identical circumstances after being pulled over by Calkins. Again, Calkins claimed to have dropped Williams off at a Circle K, but Williams also disappeared without a trace. Despite repeated investigations and public outcry, no evidence has ever been found linking Calkins to the disappearances, and both men remain missing. The cases have drawn significant media attention, and the deputy was eventually fired for inconsistencies in his statements, but he was never charged with any crime. The disappearance of Terrence Williams and Philip Santos remains one of the most chilling and unresolved mysteries in recent history, raising disturbing questions about law enforcement accountability and the potential for abuse of power. The unsolved disappearance of Asha Degree. In February 2000, 9-year-old Asha Degree mysteriously vanished from her home in Shelby, North Carolina. Asha was a bright and cheerful girl, and her disappearance shocked the local community. On the night of her disappearance, Asha went to bed as usual, but sometime during the night, she packed her backpack, left her home, and started walking along Highway 18 in the early hours of a stormy morning. Several motorists reported seeing a young girl walking along the highway, but by the time anyone realized something was wrong, Asha was gone. Her parents discovered her missing the next morning, and an extensive search was launched. Asha's backpack was later found buried along the highway, containing several of her personal items, but no other trace of her has ever been found. The circumstances surrounding Asha's disappearance are baffling. Why would a young girl leave her home in the middle of the night during a storm? Who, if anyone, might have been waiting for her? Over the years, there have been few leads, and the case has gone cold. Despite continued efforts by law enforcement and the community, Asha Degree's fate remains unknown, making her case one of the most perplexing and haunting missing person cases in the Missing 411 series. The mysterious case of Henry McCabe. In September 2015, Henry McCabe, a 32-year-old man from Mounds View, Minnesota, disappeared under incredibly strange circumstances after a night out with friends. Henry, a Liberian immigrant and father of 2, was last seen being dropped off at a gas station by a friend after a night at a club. He never made it home, and his wife reported him missing the next day. What makes this case particularly eerie is a voicemail that Henry left on his wife's phone in the early hours of the morning he disappeared. The message is filled with strange noises, including growls, moans, and what sounds like gasping or distress. At the end of the message, a voice is heard saying, "Stop it," before the call abruptly ends. Henry's body was found 2 months later in a lake, with no visible signs of trauma. The cause of death was ruled as drowning, but the strange voicemail and the circumstances surrounding his disappearance have led to widespread speculation about what really happened to him that night. Some believe Henry may have been the victim of foul play, while others think the voicemail could indicate something more supernatural or unknown. The case remains unsolved, and the unsettling nature of Henry McCabe's final moments continues to haunt those who hear the strange and disturbing recording. The disappearance of Zed Quinn. Zed Quinn, an 18-year-old from Asheville, North Carolina, disappeared under bizarre circumstances on January 2, 2000. Zeb was last seen after finishing his shift at a local Walmart. He had planned to look at a car with a friend, Robert Jason Owens, who was with him at the time. The two were captured on surveillance footage at a gas station, where Zeb appeared distressed after receiving a page. He abruptly left the gas station, and that was the last time he was seen alive. Zeb's car was found 2 weeks later in the parking lot of a hospital, with the headlights on and a large pair of lips drawn in lipstick on the rear window. Inside the car, investigators found a live puppy, empty drink bottles, and several maps. Zeb's bank account remained untouched, and there was no sign of struggle in or around the vehicle. Robert Owens was later convicted of an unrelated double murder, but he has never been charged in connection with Zed Quinn's disappearance. The strange details surrounding the case, including the bizarre items left in Zeb's car and the mysterious message he received before vanishing, have led to widespread speculation but few concrete answers. The case remains unsolved, and the unusual circumstances make it one of the most puzzling disappearances associated with the missing 411 phenomenon. The mysterious vanishing of Lars Mittank. In July 2014, 28-year-old Lars Mittank, a German tourist, vanished under mysterious circumstances while on vacation in Bulgaria. Lars had been traveling with friends in the coastal resort of Golden Sands when he got into a minor altercation that left him with a ruptured eardrum. Because of this injury, Lars was advised not to fly home immediately and stay behind while his friends returned to Germany. Lars checked into a hotel near the airport, but his behavior became increasingly erratic. He called his mother, claiming that he was being followed and that people were trying to kill him. Security footage from the hotel shows Lars pacing the halls nervously and hiding in an elevator. The next morning, Lars went to the airport, but instead of boarding his flight, he was seen on security cameras running out of the terminal, leaving his luggage and passport behind. Lars was last seen sprinting through a nearby field before disappearing into the surrounding wilderness. Despite extensive searches, Lars Mittank has never been found, and the reasons behind his sudden panic and disappearance remain a mystery. The case has been dubbed Europe's most famous missing person case, and theories about what happened to Lars range from a psychotic break or drug-induced paranoia to more sinister explanations such as foul play or human trafficking. The mysterious disappearance of Bryce Laspiza. In August 2013, 19-year-old Bryce Laspiza disappeared under baffling circumstances while driving home from college in California. Bryce had been exhibiting unusual behavior in the days leading up to his disappearance, including breaking up with his girlfriend unexpectedly and giving away his possessions. Concerned, his parents urged him to return home, and Bryce set out on what should have been a straightforward drive. However, instead of heading directly home, Bryce began acting erratically, driving in circles for hours and making cryptic phone calls to his parents. At one point, he told his mother that he had something important to talk about, but he never revealed what it was. Eventually, Bryce's car was found overturned near Castaic Lake, with the back window smashed out and his belongings, including his wallet and phone, still inside. There was no sign of Bryce. Despite an extensive search of the area, including the lake and surrounding wilderness, Bryce Laspiza has never been found. His last known movements suggest that he may have been experiencing some form of psychological distress, but the reasons for his behavior and his ultimate fate remain unknown. The case is particularly haunting due to the lack of any solid leads or evidence, leaving Bryce's family and friends to wonder what happened during those final hours before he vanished. The eerie disappearance of Brandon Swanson. In May 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson disappeared after his car got stuck in a ditch while driving home from a night out in Canby, Minnesota. Brandon called his parents, explaining that he had accidentally driven into a ditch and needed a ride home. His parents set out to find him, staying on the phone with Brandon as he tried to describe his location. However, despite his efforts to guide them, Brandon's parents were unable to find him, and at one point, Brandon told them he could see the lights of a nearby town and would walk towards it. As he walked, Brandon suddenly exclaimed, "Oh ****," and the line went dead. His parents tried to call him back, but there was no answer. Brandon's car was later found miles away from where he had said he was, and despite extensive searches, no trace of Brandon has ever been found. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance, particularly his final words and the lack of any physical evidence, have led to widespread speculation and numerous theories, including the possibility that he fell into a nearby river or encountered foul play. However, without any concrete evidence, the case remains one of the most puzzling and eerie missing person cases in recent history. The unsettling disappearance of Dennis Lloyd Martin. In June 1969, 6-year-old Dennis Lloyd Martin disappeared while on a camping trip with his family in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. Dennis was playing a game of hide and seek with other children near the Spence Field area when he suddenly vanished. Despite being just a short distance from his family, Dennis seemed to have disappeared without a trace. A massive search effort was launched, involving thousands of volunteers, the National Guard, and even the Green Berets, but no sign of Dennis was ever found. The search was complicated by heavy rains and fog, which hampered visibility and may have washed away potential evidence. The only potential clue came from another family hiking in the area who reported hearing a loud scream and seeing a rough-looking man carrying something on his back, but this lead was never substantiated. The case remains unsolved, and the disappearance of Dennis Martin continues to haunt those who followed the search. The combination of the boy's sudden vanishing, the extensive yet fruitless search, and the eerie report of a strange man in the area have made this case one of the most chilling and perplexing in the annals of the missing 411 phenomenon. The bizarre disappearance of Elisa Lam. In January 2013, 21-year-old Elisa Lam, a Canadian student, disappeared while staying at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Elisa had been traveling alone and was last seen on the hotel's security footage exhibiting bizarre behavior in one of the hotel's elevators. The footage, which went viral online, shows Elisa entering the elevator, pressing multiple buttons, and then hiding in the corner as if she were trying to avoid someone. She then exits the elevator and appears to be talking to someone off camera, though no one else is visible. After several days with no sign of Elisa, hotel guests began complaining about low water pressure and a strange taste in the water. Maintenance workers were sent to check the hotel's water tanks, where they discovered Elisa's body floating inside one of the tanks. The circumstances of Elisa Lam's death remain a mystery. The coroner ruled her death as accidental drowning, but how she ended up in the water tank remains unexplained. The rooftop where the tanks are located was locked and alarmed, and it would have been difficult for Elisa to access it on her own. The strange behavior captured on the elevator footage, combined with the eerie discovery of her body, has led to numerous theories ranging from mental illness to foul play, or even paranormal involvement. The case remains one of the most unsettling and debated mysteries in recent history. The perplexing disappearance of Ben McDaniel. In August 2010, Ben McDaniel, a 30-year-old experienced diver, disappeared while exploring Vortex Spring in Florida, a popular dive site known for its underwater cave system. Ben had been living nearby, trying to rebuild his life after a series of personal setbacks, and he frequently visited the spring to practice cave diving, an activity that requires immense skill and caution. On the day of his disappearance, Ben was seen by other divers entering the cave, but he never resurfaced. His truck was found in the parking lot with his wallet, phone, and other belongings inside, but there was no sign of Ben. Rescue divers were called in to search the cave, but despite extensive efforts, they found no trace of him. What makes this case particularly mysterious is the nature of the cave itself. The cave system at Vortex Spring is notoriously dangerous, with narrow passages that even the most skilled divers struggle to navigate. However, the areas accessible to Ben were thoroughly searched, and no body was found. Some believe that Ben may have ventured into a part of the cave that was too dangerous, while others speculate that he might have staged his own disappearance. Despite multiple search efforts and countless theories, Ben McDaniel's fate remains a mystery, leaving behind one of the most baffling cases in the history of cave diving. The unsolved disappearance of Maura Murray. On February 9, 2004, 21-year-old Maura Murray vanished after crashing her car on a rural road in Haverhill, New Hampshire. Maura, a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, had emailed her professors and employer earlier that day, stating she would be away due to a family emergency, an emergency that was later found to be fabricated. That evening, Maura crashed her car on Route 112. A passerby stopped and offered help, but Maura declined, saying she had already called for roadside assistance, a call that was never made. By the time police arrived on the scene, Maura had disappeared, leaving behind her car, which contained her belongings but no signs of foul play. Despite extensive searches, Maura has never been found, and the case has garnered significant media attention and speculation. Theories about Maura's disappearance range from abduction to her possibly running away to start a new life. However, without any concrete evidence, her disappearance remains one of the most puzzling mysteries in recent history, and the eerie nature of her vanishing has kept the case alive in public consciousness. The disappearance of Logan Schindelman. In May 2016, 19-year-old Logan Schindelman disappeared under mysterious circumstances in Tumwater, Washington. Logan, a recent high school graduate who was living with his grandmother, had been struggling with personal issues and seemed withdrawn in the days leading up to his disappearance. Logan's car was found abandoned on Interstate 5 with his wallet, phone, and other personal items inside, but there was no sign of Logan. Witnesses reported seeing his car swerving on the highway before it hit the median and stopped. Several people also claimed to have seen a man matching Logan's description walking along the highway or standing near the car, but these sightings were never confirmed. Despite extensive searches and multiple theories, Logan's fate remains unknown. The lack of evidence, the strange circumstances surrounding his car's abandonment, and the conflicting witness reports have made this case particularly frustrating for investigators and Logan's family. The case remains unsolved, and Logan Schindelman's disappearance continues to haunt the community. The vanishing of Brian Schaffer. Brian Schaffer, a 27-year-old medical student, disappeared on April 1, 2006, after a night out with friends in Columbus, Ohio. Brian and his friends had gone bar hopping to celebrate the beginning of spring break. The last known sighting of Brian was on surveillance footage from the Ugly Tuna Saloona, a bar in the South Campus Gateway district. The footage shows Brian entering the bar, but there is no footage of him leaving. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of Brian has ever been found. The mystery deepened when it was discovered that the bar had only one entrance, and all exits were covered by cameras, leading to speculation that Brian may have found a way out that wasn't captured on video. Theories about Brian's disappearance include the possibility of foul play, an accident, or that he intentionally disappeared to start a new life. However, the complete lack of evidence and the inexplicable nature of his vanishing have made this one of the most perplexing missing person cases in recent history. The disappearance of Rico Harris. In October 2014, 37-year-old Rico Harris, a former Harlem Globetrotter, disappeared while driving from Alhambra, California to Seattle, Washington, to start a new life with his fiancée. Rico's car was found abandoned in the rugged terrain of Yolo County, California, with his wallet, phone, and a few personal items inside, but there was no sign of Rico. Rico had a history of struggles, including battles with alcohol and the pressures of a once promising basketball career that didn't go as planned. Despite these challenges, those close to him said that he was excited about his future and committed to turning his life around. Search efforts were complicated by the dense forest and challenging terrain where his car was found. Theories about Rico's disappearance range from foul play to him possibly deciding to walk away from his life, though his family and friends find the latter unlikely. Despite extensive searches, including the use of dogs and helicopters, Rico Harris remains missing, and his case has become another addition to the list of mysterious disappearances that defy easy explanation. The vanishing of Jeremy Alex. In April 2004, 28-year-old Jeremy Alex disappeared after exhibiting strange behavior in the days leading up to his disappearance. Jeremy was last seen running through the woods in Northport, Maine, seemingly in a state of panic, claiming that bad people were after him. Witnesses reported seeing Jeremy running down a road, through a backyard, and into the woods where he vanished. His car was found abandoned nearby, but despite extensive searches, no trace of Jeremy was ever found. Jeremy's family and friends believe that he may have been experiencing a drug-induced psychosis, as he had struggled with substance abuse in the past. However, the complete lack of evidence and the suddenness of his disappearance have led to speculation about other possibilities, including foul play or him meeting with some form of misadventure in the dense and remote woods. Jeremy Alex's disappearance remains unsolved, adding to the list of missing persons who have vanished under strange and inexplicable circumstances. The mysterious disappearance of Michael Rockefeller. One of the most famous unsolved disappearances linked to the missing 411 phenomenon is that of Michael Rockefeller, the son of New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller. In November 1961, 23-year-old Michael disappeared while on an expedition in Papua New Guinea. Michael was collecting artifacts and studying the culture of the Asmat people when his boat capsized. While his companion swam to shore for help, Michael was last seen attempting to swim to land, but he was never seen again. The official explanation was that he likely drowned, but his body was never recovered. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged about what happened to Michael, including the possibility that he was killed by local tribespeople, that he chose to stay and live among the Asmat, or that he was captured and held against his will. The mystery surrounding Michael Rockefeller's disappearance has fascinated and puzzled historians and adventurers for decades, and the lack of concrete evidence has kept the case open to speculation. Despite extensive searches and investigations over the years, his fate remains one of the most enduring and enigmatic missing person cases of the 20th century. The strange disappearance of Stephen Kocher. In December 2009, 30-year-old Stephen Kocher disappeared after parking his car in a residential neighborhood in Henderson, Nevada. Stephen, originally from Utah, had been living in Street George and was struggling to find steady employment. His family described him as a responsible and caring person who would not simply vanish without telling anyone. Surveillance footage captured Stephen walking away from his car, seemingly with a purpose, but he never returned. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of Stephen has ever been found. His car was left behind with his phone, some clothes, and other personal items, but there was no indication of where he might have gone or what he was planning. Theories about Stephen's disappearance include the possibility of him meeting with foul play, deciding to disappear voluntarily, or suffering from some form of mental health crisis. However, the lack of evidence and the strange circumstances surrounding his disappearance have left investigators stumped, and the case remains unsolved. The vanishing of Amy Bradley. In March 1998, 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley disappeared while on a cruise with her family in the Caribbean. Amy was last seen in the early hours of the morning, sitting on the balcony of her family's cabin. When her family woke up later that morning, Amy was gone. Despite extensive searches of the ship and surrounding waters, no trace of Amy was ever found. Over the years, there have been numerous reported sightings of Amy in various Caribbean locations, with some witnesses claiming she was being held against her will. These reports have fueled speculation that Amy may have been abducted and forced into human trafficking. The mysterious circumstances of her disappearance, combined with the possible sightings, have kept the case in the public eye, and Amy's family continues to search for answers. Her disappearance remains one of the most chilling and unresolved missing person cases associated with the missing 411 phenomenon.